What is intelligence? There are many definitions. Is a bug intelligent? What about a computer? A cat? What kind of secrets does this single word hide? The implications of intelligence are so incredibly psychedelic that it's extremely hard to truly grasp what it really is. It begins with water. This is Earth approximately 4 billion years ago, so we don't know all the details. But the story is something along the lines of the ocean was full of most basic biological compounds, and the conditions were just right for single-celled organisms to develop the first kind of life. Their intelligence starts at the most basic level. They exhibit responsiveness to the environment, moving towards food and away from dangers. The inherent instinct for life to survive starts. These organisms later develop photosynthesis, which introduces oxygen to the environment, paving the road for a more complex form of life. The simple nervous system emerges. It allows organisms to associate stimuli with positive or negative outcomes, and later develops into the central nervous system, that is the brain and the spine. The development of eyes, ears, and other sensory organs allows life to better understand the world around it. The more advanced these organs are, like hands or limbs, logically, the easier it is to explore the world in more depth. Nature went about this in many different ways. Each one of octopus's arms makes decisions without the involvement of the creature's brain. Humans, in contrast, are entirely controlled by the organ. Mushrooms grow from the mycelium, a complex network of threads that searches the environment for food. Apparently, the mycelium even communicates within itself and the surrounding plants. As far as we know, Homo sapiens is life's magnum opus. We started walking upright, freed our hands, giving us the ability to use tools, touch the world. Another interesting factor is the theory of the social brain. Basically, it's suspected that the need to navigate complex social environments played a role in brain expansion as well. This can be observed in bees too. Then, a few more millennia pass, and the most important event for intelligence happens. We developed language, associating meaning with sounds, later being able to share abstract thoughts, create music, give meaning to art, develop belief. Socially, this gave rise to rituals, dances, or even burying our dead. All this context needed to be given in order for me to demonstrate the idea. Intelligence is a spectrum, and the psychedelic part is that the higher the level of intelligence, the more we seem to dive deeper into a different dimension of existence. Thoughts, symbols, intangible ideas, infinities, or spiritual experiences. Intelligence seems to be the ability and the level of understanding, both through intuition and cognition. A simple cell intuitively moves away from toxins, yet a human first abstracts. This was the intelligence part, but the concept of artificial beings existed even before civilization. It started in the myths and legends of humanoid statues being brought to life by master craftsmen. Some examples would be the ancient Greek myth of Talos, a statue that was imbued with life by Hephaestus. Judaism envisioned golems. They were made alive by the enlightened with divine breath. But the real deal starts with machines. Without them, there would be no artificial intelligence, since our condition is that there is no fireballs or imps, unfortunately. So, genius engineers found ways to make lifelike beings, the automata. They were around for at least as long as civilization. According to the legends, they were used in ancient Egypt, China, Israel, or Greece, basically all over the world. Wikipedia claims that the ancient Greeks' understanding of machines was limited to statistics, and theoretically that might be true, but practically they must have been onto something more. The Antikythera mechanism, the first known computer, an analog one, which basically means it used physical phenomena like the switching of gears to perform calculations. It was able to calculate astronomical positions and used just mentioned gears, which made it truly hundreds of years ahead of its time. Around the same time, Aristotle is at his school, the Lyceum. After 50 years of his life, he is finally ready to give his first lecture on logic. This is unknown to Aristotle, but his ideas would be the groundwork for digital computers and artificial intelligence, which are made of logic. The Antikythera mechanism followed logical patterns as well, but it wasn't abstracted nearly as much as modern computers. All of these ideas would appear throughout history again, but really, it's about math. So, in order to build a thinking machine, we need to systematize the very process of thought. Aristotle wasn't actually the first person to give it a go. Chinese and Indian philosophers attempted this before him. Then, we can't forget about Euclid and his Elements, a treatise on mathematics, or later the Persian polymath Al-Khwarizmi, who developed algebra and gave his name to the algorithm. Humans intuitively realize the importance of logic. Now, things get real with European scientists. First in the 13th century with Spanish Ramon Lull, who developed several machines in the pursuit of knowledge by logical means. Then the Enlightenment and the Renaissance roll in. Thomas Hobbes, René Descartes, and Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz all speculated that human thought could be reduced to mechanical calculations. Leibniz, for example, inspired by Aristotle and Lull, envisioned the Characteristica Universalis, a universal language of logic. His dream was for philosophers to never have to argue again. Any dispute would be solved with pen, paper, and some good old calculations. And so, the idea that reasoning is a kind of calculation with symbols, the physical symbol system hypothesis, emerged. Remember how we talked about intelligence at the beginning? How highly intelligent beings are able to recognize patterns and symbols? That's what the physical symbol system is. You would basically take something physical and give it meaning, like punch cards, where different numbers of holes in the paper would mean different things, or different numbers, and then the numbers would mean something else. The study of mathematical logic would continue, and in the 19th century, Charles Babbage came up with the idea of computational engines. He only managed to build prototypes, but the second machine, known as the analytical engine, was so sophisticated that it resembled a modern computer. Ada Lovelace even wrote the first computer program in human history for the machine, presenting the possibility of programmable computers with logical instructions. But all of this work culminated in the 20th century. In 1936, Alan Turing invented the concept of the Turing machine, a simple mathematical model that proved the theoretical existence of digital computers. This concept proved that a mechanical device shuffling symbols as simple as zeros and ones could imitate any process of mathematical deduction. This is exactly what philosophers and scientists were looking for all those thousands of years, and this idea led to the invention of digital, since they use abstract digits, computers, during World War II in 1945. But even before that, as early as 1941, the same Alan Turing was speculating about machine intelligence in a paper that is now lost to time. 2 years later, researchers McCulloch and Pitts presented the artificial neuron, an elementary part of a neural network. Then, in 1951, it's the first time games get intertwined with machine learning. Several people write checkers and chess programs able to challenge respectable amateurs. Game AI would continue to be used as a measure of progress in AI throughout the history, and video games will forever be entangled with this field. In this early era of AI, there wasn't such a massive amount of data, so reasoning was the researchers' goal. Digital computers became more widely available for researchers in the middle 50s. Some scientists realized that while computers can manipulate numbers, maybe they would also be able to manipulate symbols, and the manipulation of symbols could very well be the essence of human thought. In 1955, the first AI program is written, The Logic Theorist. It would be the first ever to prove mathematical theorems, find more elegant solutions for some, and be described as a solution to the mind-body problem. The problem of how something material can have an immaterial mind, symbol manipulation. The term artificial intelligence gets coined by John McCarthy at the Dartmouth Workshop of 1956. Then, another W, the most important one in this part of the story. This time, at MIT, researchers from many fields were present. Most notably for the discussion, George Miller described one of the most highly cited papers in psychology.
The magical number 7, plus or minus 2.
Miller then wrote,
I left the symposium with a conviction, more intuitive than rational, that experimental psychology, theoretical linguistics, and the computer simulation of cognitive processes were all pieces from a larger whole.
This was the beginning of the cognitive revolution, a paradigm shift in multiple related disciplines. The crazy part, to me at least, is that with this revolution we got proof that the symbolic nature of computer science has something to do with human cognition. All discoveries made were relevant to each field: psychology, philosophy, computer science, and neuroscience. Out of this we got entire new study fields. The approach that allowed for this revolution was an even more complex consideration of symbols, something called mental objects, like thoughts, plans, goals, facts or memories that we weren't able to study earlier. All of this led to extreme optimism, with crazy claims being thrown around, like that a fully intelligent machine will be built in less than 20 years. But those 20 years would play out differently, and the researchers failed to appreciate the difficulty of the problems they faced. Public expectations were raised too high, and so the funding had to be cut. With the progress on neural networks coming to a halt thanks to Marvin Minsky's book Perceptrons, in 1974 starts the first AI winter. Some time passed, the possibilities got larger, and a new view on the subject was needed. That came with expert systems in 1980. This time they used data, that data being expert knowledge on highly specific subjects. That's why expert systems found use in fields like finances or medical analysis. Then, money returned, and neural networks come back alive, just for all of it to get covered in snow once again in 1987. Typical economic bubble that burst because it still wasn't the next wave. At this point, it's the 90s. Something that we would all recognize as artificial intelligence only started emerging now. It's been about 50 years since the field began its existence. Comparably to computers, it only recently started achieving some of its oldest goals. Since the very beginning, though, it was entangled with games. So, you're back in 2012, playing Minecraft again. Those days won't ever come back. But what is that? Look carefully. The game is running at 30 frames per second. A terribly optimized 3D game written in Java running at such high quality was really something to behold. It is all thanks to the GPU.
Graphics Processing Unit.
High-tech gaming graphics cards allowed for a different type of computing called parallel computing to be used. The power of such GPUs was used to train deep neural networks. That's why the attack on perceptrons during the first AI winter did so much damage, because deep neural networks would prove to be the basis for modern AI. These networks were trained on massive datasets brought about with the explosion of the World Wide Web. That's what we lacked before, advanced hardware and datasets to provide knowledge for the program. We got image recognition, natural language processing, or a reinforcement learning that teaches software to make the most optimal decisions. DeepMind technologies, and the protagonist of this part of the story, OpenAI, achieved superhuman performance with their models in games like Go through DeepMind and Dota 2 for OpenAI. Again, video games are used to measure the field's progress. At this point, artificial intelligence is advanced enough to beat the best players in games, but only a few people could expect where that would go. Elon Musk, Ilya Sutskever, and Sam Altman, the main founders of OpenAI. The non-profit organization was founded in 2015. The Open in OpenAI symbolized their belief for free access to artificial intelligence for all of humanity. At first, they didn't see much breakthroughs. Google was much ahead of them. For example, they released a deep learning architecture called Transformers in 2017. Then, 1 year later, Elon Musk leaves OpenAI. Sam Altman stays as the board director. What's interesting about Altman is how weird of a person he is. At the age of 8, he started taking apart computers and got into coding. He was basically raised on IRCs, internet relay chats, an early version of Discord, for example. He dropped out of college, never even earning his bachelor's degree, founded a social networking app called Looped where he made millions. That money would later allow him to become the founder of OpenAI. Under Altman's leadership, the organization looks into Google's Transformers. What they found would start the AI revolution. Large language models, or LLMs. In 2021, DALL-E comes out and takes the internet by a storm. On November 30th, 2022, just a year later, they release ChatGPT. There is no going back now. In just 3 months, the company gathers 100 million users. In 16 months, since the release of ChatGPT, more progress in the field was made than in the last 100 years. That's even faster than the progress of computers. And so, AI makes its way into a chunk of our lives, and in that short period of time, we get ChatGPT 4, the earliest version of AGI, Stable Diffusion, Sora, Claude, and many more from companies all around the industry. AI bots run rampant on social media, getting boomers to believe the most insane things, with misinformation being spread like never before. Some people believe the Eiffel Tower burned down. The tower is made of metal though. American presidents play Call of Duty. Dead musicians release new songs. Some artists, programmers, tutors, and people from many other fields lose their jobs. So, AI must be detrimental to humanity, right? Next in line for replacement must be cashiers, then retailers, and many other fields, even physical ones. There are problems with copyright, since the models need to be trained on something. Political and cultural bias are inevitable, since somebody trains these bots. Like ChatGPT would praise Joe Biden, but not Donald Trump. Why even have artists of all kinds when AI can create images, write, and make music? Why even have humans if half of the population won't need to wear it? Not to mention the threat of cybersecurity, monopolized control over this technology, but state actors infiltrating companies to create God knows what kinds of abominations, or 1984-like dystopias. Put your tinfoil hat on for this one. I've seen somebody say that the elites will just wipe everyone out when we won't be needed. Anyway, sure, right now LLMs make mistakes, but what will happen in 10 years?
Do not be afraid.
So many of these problems can be fixed by AI. Human artists will always be in demand because the human part of art is what we consume content for. Humans will always be needed because the more of us there are, the higher the likelihood of the next prodigy being born. Also, who else would elites exploit? All empires need the common people. And while I could go on like this refuting all kinds of arguments for hours, this is just the presented point. Revolutions are a part of humanity, and all of them bring concerns. The late Ted Kaczynski garnered a group of sympathizers on the internet with his critiques of the Industrial Revolution. The younger generations can already feel the impact of digitalization, but maybe the problem isn't with the technology itself. Society feels wrong. We live in the best times in history, better than kings, yet people are unhappy by large. It's the life driven by interpersonal connections and creation that we see in the hunter-gatherer stage of human evolution that seems to be the most fulfilling. The lifestyle of going to school, then living 9 to 5 is what robots are exactly made for, just with shorter recharge time. In the West, the American boomer dream is dead, and for somebody from the post-communist bloc, yeah, that's that, you're from the post-communist bloc.
Work, sleep, eat.
I think you can agree there needs to be a change. This change can happen. For Gen Z, being raised on technology has had its downsides, but I've observed that we are much more intelligent, generally, than the generations before. That's really no surprise with how much access to data we have, and I feel like there is this intrinsic connection between access to sophisticated technology from a young age and the level of an individual's awareness. Revolutions are always scary, but has humanity not survived so many of them? And with people who are so concerned about security at the front, can we not try and let this new era bring finally some change to this stagnated society? What we have also seen before is that sometimes it just isn't the right time. But if you remember the second winter, the bubble burst because it wasn't the next wave. This isn't the case now. Either way, it seems like with this technology, the focus is being kept on personal freedom with extreme caution.
AI is going to have, I believe, tremendously more good consequences than bad ones, but it is going to have bad ones. And there'll be some bad ones that are bad but not theatrical. Like a lot more people have died of air pollution than nuclear reactors, for example. But most people worry more about living next to a nuclear reactor than a coal plant. But something about the way we're wired is that although there's many different kinds of risks we have to confront, the ones that make a good climax scene of a movie carry much more weight with us than the ones that are very bad over a long period of time, but on a slow burn.
Being replaced is scary, but more scary things are happening right now and are still coming. Keeping AI back will only cause more harm. Why? I don't know, I'm tired. Not to even mention worldwide political tensions, climate change, raising distrust towards governments and companies, changing social norms, the mental gap between generations, male loneliness, or female emotional instability. Of course, I'm speaking from my limited perspective of the world and people, but have such sentiments not been thrown around for a while now? You can never be sure, but my prediction would be that we are racing towards some sort of a collapse. So what else can solve any of this? All the surface level problems will have solutions, like UBI, the Universal Basic Income, which I'm sure people much more educated than me will figure out. I've heard that people won't have to think anymore. Maybe the people who would never think in the first place won't. Personally, this technology has helped me think more critically. Already in my own work, I've managed to use AI to create even more and better, without the need for an entire crew as an indie creator. And with the pushback from so many artists, I consider myself an artist, so hear me out. I've found immeasurable value in those tools. You can do that too, for anything, but personally I'd still rather use human work if I can afford it. Because aren't we more than our jobs? How many people do something they hate their entire lives? How many people live pointlessly, with no friends or family? Won't we have more time to explore real life rather than simple existence? And with the psychedelic implications of this technology, maybe more people can realize there is more to this life. So, because with this knowledge of the imminent, we can make sure that we hold the ones in power accountable and dive towards freedom.